That's what I do before I go up at mics. Like, you'll just catch me in the corner just jumping up and down. Just be like, all right.
Oh, what? Oh, my God.
Yeah, no, seriously. I'll do jumping jacks in the corner. I'll be just a jump. Like, jumping is my thing before mic.
You know what I would love to see? It was like a celebrity moment. It felt like seeing, when shows will bring two different shows together into one. For some reason, I had this moment last night when our dear sweet friend Reagan came up to you and you guys just started interacting in like a nice, like adorably fun way. It was the first time I've like seen you guys like friend wise, and I was like, this is like the multiverses combining right now. I don't know why. It was the funniest thing to me. I like looked at Lady and I was like,
well, we're both kind of like irreverent kind of like female comics, and like, but then like we're both sweethearts.
Oh yeah,
that's what we are.
Yeah,
we're both like we say some like kind of like we come off like on stage, but like that's not who we are.
Not me, bitch. All right.
It's true.
Welcome to This Feels Funny. My name is Tyler Jones.
I'm Kat West.
And we are two comedians that are doing a podcast that is a silly podcast about real feelings.
Real feelings.
Yeah. We are diving into part 2 this week after our last episode where we were really getting into the idea of self-help, self-diagnosis, the whole questioning behind it, and then we kind of left off last week talking about, you said, what, the DSM, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we had that, and the DSM, the BDSM, the big donkey something manual. So, yeah.
Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders is what it stands for. It's what all like psychiatrists use to diagnose people with. It's the list of all the mental disorders. And something people commonly say is like up until I don't remember when it was taken off, but like homosexuality was in there as a mental disorder. And so it's like that just like makes it even like I don't believe in it. Yeah. I don't believe in it. I think it's all just like ways of kind of like making people feel wrong for like very human reactions to the world.
Well, I'm super glad that you brought that up, because if we did not validate our disbelief in the DSM by saying homosexuality used to be in it, then I think that people would think that you and I might be lunatics.
It could be true. But that's okay. Like that's what like is lunacy a realistic reaction to the world? I think so.
He's speaking to us.
Is he speak? I don't want to look.
So that's my lunacy. Well, yeah, okay. So one of the big things that we discussed before was how we have those labels. Sure, we can invalidate the whole nature of that manual in some way, and we can say I don't really subscribe to whatever it's telling me in this case, and it's deeply flawed because of how subjective mental health is in its entirety.
Yeah.
But what it's also done, and this is something that I feel, I noticed this more during like when the pandemic was at its peak, when COVID-19 started to break out. All of a sudden, I don't mind when people that are like that have political conversations. Do your thing. You can have an opinion. You can be well read on stuff, but I don't want to hear anybody's medical opinions, because when it comes down to it, like for physical health, illness, viruses, disease, stuff like that, epidemiology in its entirety and virology in its entirety, it's like, hey, why are you acting like this is an opinion? Now, from a psychological standpoint, I feel like what everybody has done is taking a scientific psychological standpoint and then making it into taking a subjective opinion, their own experience with it, and then making that fact.
Yes. Yeah. One thing we didn't really mention at the beginning when we were talking about self-help and psychology in terms of social media.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's just something I want to like get out there, because it is so many people now. We all have this ability to share our voice with the world. And so something that I wanted to bring up with this whole self-help realm is that like people will just start saying stuff with this voice of authority as fact, and there are people who aren't going to go do their own research and aren't going to look into it, and so they hear somebody say something with a tone of authority and they're like, yep, that's what it is. And it's like, it's not. That is truly just their opinion, and they're not saying that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, why are you doing that to me right now? And I think that it's like it's fun to say like, hey, I have issues with depression. I have traits that seem to be like XYZ. It's one of those things like I opening up here. As you know, and a lot of my close people know, I have obsessive compulsive disorder. That is my one thing that I have. I have like bits of like depressive feelings around it, but I haven't been like, my doctor's not like, you have depression. It's like, not really. I have like some anxiety that comes from it and things of that nature. But it's like, I think that we can identify traits of these particular, for lack of a better term, dysfunctions and disorders within ourselves, and we can appreciate that. But to say like, okay, all of a sudden now I have OCD because I make the joke all the time, because I don't like it when my socks don't match. It's like, stop. All of a sudden you're like imitating Nicolas Cage and Matchstick Men because you think that you relate to an online quiz that tells you that you might be OCD, right?
And I want to say, like, I don't disbelieve in the idea of mental health disorders existing. I just think that the way that we have, like, I think that it's flawed. Yeah. And I think that so many people, rather than focus on change or on seeing themselves as somebody who's not inherently flawed, would rather seek something that's a diagnosis that explains away the dysfunction that they're feeling. But I do think there definitely are very real disorders that exist. Yeah. I just think that a lot of the framework is flawed, and that it isn't necessarily the best thing, the most helpful thing for people to immediately try to assign a label to themselves. Yeah. Like, it's something that there should be a bigger barrier to being given one of these labels. It's a very big deal, and there's a lot of stigma, and it's something that shouldn't just be like, I took a quiz and now I'm this. Yes. And it's like, probably not. Like, you're a quirky person, but like, has this caused very real, tangible dysfunction within your life? Is this something that you deal with on a daily basis, not just like, sometimes my socks don't match, and sometimes I really just like everything to line up just perfect. Like, that's not what OCD is, know? And it's so tiny. Easy for people to try to be like, well, I'm just this way because of this thing. And it's like, well, you could change, You
could just be different.
You could just like be better. I don't know.
I agree, and one thing I do want to say, just for the sake of like the listeners here, is like we're not going to get into like the realm of accessibility for diagnosis. We're very aware and appreciative of the fact that it is extremely hard to come by like the care that you need, and autism diagnosis are so complicated, and they're ever evolving, and they're very hard to get where you need to go, and it's fucking expensive. Yeah. Some of my loved ones and my nieces and nephews suffer from this particular condition, and it's taken years upon years and tens of thousands of dollars of investment just to get to that point, and just to get to the point of like determining what would the treatment be. Yeah. And it's like, so I understand all that, and so we go to like. I'm glad
that you brought that up, because there is the barrier of, do you have the socioeconomic status to be able to even access this care?
Yeah, true.
That's being marketed to you as something that you desperately need in order to be a fully functioning human being. Right. And my whole viewpoint is coming from this place of like, if you really needed it, probably could help, but like, not everybody has the access to it. And also, I think that it is overused to make some people who have the access to this care feel better with, now they've assigned a label to this, this thing.
Exactly. And people want that. Yeah. And I think that that's the frustration that you and I have with this is not the people themselves that are utilizing the labels. It is, as when I was talking about OCD, it's not about like them saying, oh, I have OCD. It's not about a person saying like, oh, I have autism. It's not about somebody saying I'm bipolar, depressed, yada, yada, yada. The whole kit and caboodle. Love that term. It's about the exploitation of these diagnoses, these labels, to make another person feel like, oh, this is what I have.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. Thanks for helping me get on track there. I didn't want to come across as abrasive.
No, but like, I did want to point out that there are very real conditions that people should receive help for, and that it is not just a waste of time to see a psychologist or see somebody about these things. But there is this way, especially when we talk about social media.
Yeah.
Where it's overused, and it's for me, I'm just seeing avoidance, and I personally, this is my own just being vulnerable. I'm probably, if I were to test, I'm sure I would test positive for autism. I'm sure I could get diagnosed with bipolar if I really wanted to.
Sure.
Like, I think I could qualify for a lot of these things, but I don't necessarily see the benefit in me using these labels as a way to distance myself from my very real lived experience and my behavior. Okay. And I would rather be able to, like, and it's not a thing of like, I don't want a label, but it's like, do I need it? Yeah. And is it something that's going to actually benefit my life?
Yeah. No, truly.
Like,
that's a good point.
That's something, that's where I've come from. Like, I do want to be different. I want to be better, and I want to, like, be able to do these things to self-improve. But for me personally, like, those labels can kind of be a way to distance yourself from the experience. And and I've caught myself going into that same kind of mentality of like, oh, I'm just this way because of this thing. And it's a way for me to not take accountability for my own behavior, when it's times where it's like, yeah, you could change that. Yeah. Like, you could make some work and that wouldn't plague you as much. Yeah. And yeah.
That sounds like a lot.
It is.
It is, yeah. I mean, I've seen it within myself, but, like, from what you're saying, it sounds like you've been in this situation where you're trying to, like, I want to be able to define this, but
yeah.
I can imagine it's really hard to be like, I am trying to figure myself out, and I'm trying to contextualize it.
Yes, and the context. It is a way to contextualize it, like having a label. But I've been trying to be able to do that for myself without having to have the label to contextualize it, and just be like, again, like, I think a lot of mental health stuff it's everybody experiences it to some degree, and it's about being able to recognize that, like, it's a reasonable reaction to part of whatever your lived experience is. It doesn't make you intrinsically flawed. It doesn't make you so broken that you have to be labeled with this thing, and, like, it could be helpful, but for me, like, I don't like, labels make me go to black and white thinking, which is where I get lost.
Right.
Black and white thinking is no good for me.
And that links back to what you were saying about, like, the human experience is so wildly diverse.
Yes.
And vast. Yes, exactly. Vast is a better word for it. Yeah. God, I just wish that I feel for the people. Like, it's like I can come off hot on this. I really can.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do so. And it's like, it's because I feel for those individuals, and, like, how long it took me in my journey to figure out where I was, because it was like, you have an anxiety disorder. Okay, you actually don't have an anxiety disorder. You have bipolar disorder. Oh my God, getting misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder was one of the worst things in my life.
Like, that could really, like, I think the quickness to want to go to diagnosis can cause even more dysfunction in some people, because it, it's so easy to now be like, well, this is just how I am.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh no, like, it's something I wrote down recently was like, that I really, really identified with was like, I don't think you're wrong for being that way, or I don't think you're wrong for reacting that way. I'm just sorry that you had to. Oh. And that, like, so much of what we see as dysfunction or as something that's wrong or bad about us is a reasonable reaction to circumstances. Yeah. And it's just so easy to be like, no, my brain's broken. It's like, no, like, stuff happened. Yeah. Stuff happened that brought you there. And that's okay. That's okay. That was a reasonable reaction that you had. If you really were to, like, peel back the layers and understand where it came from, it's like, oh no, that's actually just, like, a very human way to react to those circumstances.
It truly is.
And so much of mental health is just a coping mechanism for the things that we experience.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So when it comes down to certain coping mechanisms that you have in place, what are some of the things that you would like? This is a good segment idea.
Coping mechanisms?
We've talked about this.
What are your coping?
Let's talk about coping mechanisms when we have like a specific thing that pops up. Let's just take mine, for instance, where I get like very frustrated very easily.
Yeah.
Right? I become very impatient. I become very flustered because I believe that there are rules that we all need to be following. And I have to neutralize those thoughts. We use this term all the time when we're talking about obsessive compulsive disorder is how do we neutralize the thought? And we have the obsession, which causes the compulsive behavior. We have to neutralize it to resist the compulsive behavior.
Yeah.
And it lets the obsession calm itself down, which is like going back to the whole thing. Bipolar, misdiagnosed. Okay, cool. That sucked. That was a rough couple of years for me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then it was like, oh, no, you just have ADHD maybe because you're having trouble focusing on X, Y, and Z. And it's like, okay. And then it was like, tell me more about what you're having trouble focusing on. And what prompts that? And it was like, yeah, so I just can't stop thinking about this thing that I needed to correct. And it's like, oh, that's annoying. So how I cope with it in general is I will, if I have a specific set of frustrations that pop up, I will always take a step back and I identify what are the emotions that I'm feeling. And this was taught to me by my therapist through, as we know, it's cognitive processing therapy, and then we have cognitive behavioral therapy. CPT and CBT are two different things. One heals with trauma, and one helps with coping. So the CPT side that is very popularized through like journals that get sold, which hell yeah, I'm a huge fan of that shit. Check those things out. They teach you how to do it. Is I identify those emotions that I'm feeling. And then what we do is we go into like, what's causing me to be stuck within those emotions? I have the thought, and then we create a stuck point. The stuck point is where I spiral, where it's like, if this happens, I'm thinking about this, it's causing me to feel anxious, it's causing me to feel upset, angry, distracted. Great. Those are all full-fledged. I am stuck on this feeling of this will happen if I do not correct it. And if I don't correct it, it will be disastrous. Well, okay. That reality is being stipulated by and exacerbated by those emotions. So think back. What's the reality here? What will happen? It's unlikely, again, I did a stand-up bit about this, but it's unlikely you didn't blow your candle out because you remember doing it. It's unlikely also that the house is going to burn down with where the candle was positioned.
Yeah, even if the candle burned for 12 hours, it would probably be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. Absolutely. So when I take that anxiety and I pull away from it, I can actually like say, okay, nothing will happen and it will be okay. And you will be able to resolve it upon arrival. Now, how do you feel now? And that's the step that a lot of people apparently, according to my doctor, miss is how do I feel now that I have talked myself through the likelihood of that stuck point being a real thing?
Yeah.
That impatience is down here now. It's about 50% instead of 70. Yeah. That anger with myself, that guilt is at 10%. Yeah. The fear and anxiety, it's down here now.
Yeah.
And that's how I cope. And that helps a lot. And it sounds like a ton because I just went on a 5-minute spiel about it.
Yeah.
In all actuality, it takes like 10 seconds to do, if even.
So I like what that boiled down to was like, once you're done with all the processing, it gets down to curiosity.
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest coping mechanism for me. And like talking about this podcast, doing stuff in a, like, let's not take it all so seriously. I've had to do that with myself and with my own, like, I don't want to say buzzword, like say words that will get us like, but like with my own ideas towards self-harm or non-existence, I boil it down towards curiosity and make it something that is playful, and being able to just not be fully enmeshed in that experience that I'm having and being able to, a third part of me outside of the fear and the actual feeling is like, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
Huh. What are you feeling at the end of all of that process? What's up?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, this couch is pretty slidey.
It
like,
is, isn't it?
Stuff like that, you know, where it's like, oh, I'm back in my body. What am I experiencing?
Yeah.
What's going on for me? And not taking it all so personally and having to necessarily label all of it and be like, oh, I'm a little hungry. Okay.
Yeah.
Or like, I was feeling really weird and now I'm here. Okay. And just being able to boil down these things that can feel so heavy and feel so like inconquerable to like, oh, huh, interesting. You didn't really take care of yourself today. That didn't help.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
So
and like boiling it down to a place where you ask yourself a question that's disarming and that is like kind.
Yeah.
And that is ultimately with like the whole self-help thing is like, is this encouraging me to be kinder to myself?
Yeah.
Is this more of putting this idea in my head that something is wrong with me that I have to fix?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to resist that. I'm going to push that away. And I'm not gonna absorb anything else. Sure. Versus people who are like coming from this point of like, what's up? I don't know. Could be different for you. You know,
Yeah.
What's happening for you, and like getting to a place where it isn't so heavy and so like something that has to be taken so stinking seriously. Like even for me, suicidal impulses. I'm like, oh, that's a really silly reason to want to do that.
Sure.
Wild. Interesting.
Yeah.
How did you get there?
That is interesting too. Wow. So when we talk about things around something so dark and terrifying, like again, as one would say, in a lighter way, yeeting ourselves into the void. No, it's not funny. I'm sorry, listeners.
But sometimes
we take humor. That's what we do.
Sometimes it's
literally.
actually like the only thing. Like I say this in stand up. Like some of the like laughing at myself in the darkest moments is what has saved me.
Yeah.
Being able to be like, wow, you're taking yourself so seriously right now. Like you don't have to.
Because you're not insulting yourself in that way too. You're not deprecating.
Yeah, and it's not going into that self-deprecating mindset. It's just like it's really truly like what the curiosity.
Yeah.
Because curiosity is never like judging you. Curiosity is never trying to label you. It's genuinely just like, huh, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's up? And that kind of ties into what we wanted to talk about with like reaching out to people.
Yeah, exactly.
For help or for like when you have a problem, when they aren't immediately going into problem solving mode and they ask you more questions.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, I automatically assume I understand what you're going through and I'm going to give you a solution to it because that is separating.
Right. Because it's like, I'm down right now. I don't feel very good about me. And I want to come to you to ask if you can hold this space for me right now.
Yeah.
And if they can, I just want you to listen.
Yeah.
I don't want you to help me fix this because that's not the space that I'm in right now. And we have to, and that's that mutual respect of space within our support systems.
Yeah.
It's to say, I have this. I respect your space if you can't hear about it right now, and I need to respect that.
I mean, and that's what social media self-help just intrinsically can never do for you. Yeah. It can never hold that space for your unique variances of your experience.
Yeah.
But still, it's so easy. It's so accessible for us to do that, to look at it and be like, that is what it is. Instead, what so many of us, I think, need in that moment is somebody to be like, tell me more.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I think that's a good point.
And that social media and all these self-help, they do not have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and we talk about the accessibility of help. And so it can be really hard to find someone who is there, like have the money, have the time, have the space to be able to make the appointment.
Yeah.
To be able to make another appointment if they're not a good fit for you.
Yeah.
You know, that takes so much privilege.
It does. You're right. And
so like having those people who are willing to like sit in curiosity with you and not want to label your experience.
I think that that's a really good point. I think that that's like when we start to look at how we are contextualizing, like you said, it's easy to want to seek a label. In conclusion to this, really, it's easy to want to seek a label. It's okay to want to seek a label, but this might even go back to what we said previously. Don't look for a destination or an end. it's cheesy as shit to say.
And it's so hard to fucking do.
Oh my God, yeah.
I just want it to be better. I would like you to fix me, please.
Oh, I know it. And it's like I need something to validate what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
It's really cool. We just had a really interesting moment where we came on this podcast episode hot.
Yeah.
Like worked up about this thing.
And then we tempered all the way down.
We did.
Both of us were like, oh my gosh, yeah.
We exercised temperance. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Again, I'm Tyler Jones.
Cat West. And I just want to say, there is a train coming, and like, toot toot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if you're feeling like that whistle is just a blowing, I want you to remember you're not alone. Okay? You like that?
Make sure to follow us on Spotify and all the streaming platforms. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram for constant updates. We'll see you next week. Thanks.
And we love you.
And we love you.